In this lesson, we're going to learn how to control our offset based on time. Alright, so let's jump right into the script. Alright, so to get started, I want to do a little bit of cleanup. We are going to be creating a sprite animation class here, or function, or script, and we're going to have lots and lots of different executions to go through. And so doing all of that inside of the update function can be a little heavy, and it can be very difficult to debug. So what I want to do is I want to create a function called void play animation. And inside of this function, we are going to hold all of this information right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this. I'm going to Control X to cut it, and then go into my play animation, hit Control V. Now, I don't really care too much for having variables inside of functions like this. So I'm going to take this vector2 frame size, and I'm going to bring it up here into a private variable. So let's say private vector2, and we're going to say frame size, and just end with a semicolon. Let's do the same thing for our private vector2 frame offset, and let's set that up there. Okay, now the reason that I want to do this, I want to set it outside, is so that way if I need to, other functions can access this variable. So that's the reason I like doing this. Alright, so now that we have that in our update function, let's make sure that we call that play animation function. So that way it's at least running, and we're getting that. Alright, so now in our play animation function, I need to get an animation time going. So I need to set my current frame to the next frame every single second. So let's create a couple of variables in here, and I'm going to just make a quick comment. I'm going to say that this is going to be my animation control variables. Alright. Now inside of here, we're going to create a public variable, and it's going to be an int, and we're going to say current frame. And I'm going to set this equal to 1 to start out. The next variable that I want to create is going to be another public variable, but it's going to be a float value. And we're going to say anim time. And to start out, we're going to set it at 0.0f. We're going to need a couple of other private variables, so I'm going to go ahead and just put it in here right now. I'm going to say vector2 frame position, and end with a semicolon. Okay, so we have frame position, frame size, and offset, and I think there was, yes, one more. It was going to be our frames per second. So I'm going to say public float FPS for frames per second, and let's set this equal to 10.0 for right now, and we'll allow the designer to adjust that as needed. So now that we have these values set, let's go into our play animation function and start getting that time that we need. So what I'm going to do is whenever the game starts, okay, we're going to start updating, and I'm going to say anim time minus equals time.delta time. Okay. So once that starts, it's going to start counting down. Now, if I wanted to, I could hit save, and we can go into Unity, and you can see that this is now updating. If I hit play, you'll notice that anim time begins to count down, and every single second we count down. Perfect. Now, we're getting there, but now we just need to start tying that to things like our current frame. So that way we can tie that to our offset. So here we're going to put an if statement. We're going to say if anim time is less than or equal to 0, I want it to take the current frame up. Okay, so I want it to increase that current frame. So I'm going to say current frame plus equals 1. And then I'm also going to say anim time plus equals 1.0. Now you might be asking, why do we want to add time to the anim time? Well, every time that it reaches 0 or less, I want it to reset to 1. So it's going to create a loop from 0 to 1. And every time it reaches 0, where our current frame is going to go up, and then our time, anim time, is going to reset at 1. So let's take a look and see how this works. Let's go ahead and hit play. You'll see that this is adjusting, and every time it reaches 0, our current frame is increasing. Perfect. So now we want to take a look at how we can get that to start tying to our offset. Now before I can do that, it would be a good idea to go ahead and set up my animation frames and then also my animation IDs that I have set up. So what I want to do is I want to basically break down the sprite sheet into numbers. So if we take a look at our Photoshop document of our sprite sheet, I want this to be frame number 1, frame 2, all the way down to frame 8 at the end. And then once it gets to frame 9 on that current frame, I want it to come down and drop a row and then say that this is frame 9 all the way down to 16. And then once it gets to 17, it's going to come down here and continue on all the way down to the end of the sprite sheet. So to get started with doing that, let's go ahead and just set up our animation frames and our animation ID, as it's going to make it much easier to debug. So let's go ahead and minimize Photoshop, and let's go ahead and start creating our long list of animations that we have. So we need the variables. So I'm going to come down below here, and I'm going to make a quick comment, and I'm going to say animation frames. Okay. Now I'm going to create my animation frames with a min and a max number. So where does the animation start and where does the animation end? So the start is going to be the min and the end is going to be the max. And these are going to be my variables. All right, so these are going to be private variables. So we're going to say private int idle. Okay, it's going to be the first one. Now the idle animation is a single frame. So I only need to give it the frame number that this is supposed to be. So I'm going to say frame number 1. Okay. With this, or I'm sorry, not 1, it's going to be 17 actually. Now you might be asking, where did I get that number? Let's go into Photoshop and take a look here. This sprite right here is actually the idle turning left. So the character is not in movement, but the wheels are turned to the left. Down here, the character is in idle. The wheels are straight and ready to go. Okay, so if you look through here, we have 1 through 8, 9 through 16, and then 17. So that's where I'm getting these numbers. So that's going to be set there, and then we're going to say private int idle left, and then we're going to start in with the value of 1. Private int idle right, this is going to be a value of 2, and then private int, we're going to say drive min, okay, because the drive animation actually has 2 frames. So the first frame is going to be frame 3, and then the second frame is going to be the drive max, and that's going to be set to 4. Private int, and we're going to have drive left min, and this is going to be equal to 5. And then private int drive left max is equal to 6. And then private int drive right min equals 7. And then same thing, private int drive right max equals 8. And then we have our spin. So I'm going to say private int spin. It's only one frame. And we're going to set this equal to 9. Private int explosion min. And this is going to be equal to 10. And then private int explosion max. And this one we're going to set to 16. Okay, so this one's quite a bit longer. Now to end this lesson, we're going to create our animation ID numbers or variables. Okay. Now the reason that we're creating this is because I don't want to have to remember what number each animation should be. And so I'm going to tie the number to an actual variable name. So we're going to say private int anim idle, and this is going to be equal to 0. And then private int anim idle left is equal to 1. Private int anim right or idle right equals 2. And then private int anim drive equals 3. Private int anim, let's see, drive left equals 4. And you get the idea. So let's just finish it off here. Anim drive right is going to be 5. And then we're going to have anim spin is equal to 6. And then finally, we're going to have private int explosion equals 7. All right, so let's actually do anim explosion just to keep with the same set there. So we have everything nice and neat and clean. We've got all of our animation frames and animation ID set up. So we are now ready to go to start hooking up the different frames and getting those set to the IDs and getting that to offset on our sprite mesh. So we're going to get started with that next.